I think that goes back to the 50s, actually, it was the settlement house.
Or under the circumstances.
And you know, you figure that the electric utility, by having our own electric utility, has given a superb quality of service and very, in a cost-effective manner to the residents of Madison, whether they're a taxpayer or not. So why not have them, all of them, assume the cost rather than just the taxpayer?
Well,
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, no. But as I got more clarity on this issue, my concern is the exception becomes the rule. And that you start getting the exempt shell. I want to make sure we're not creating a loophole that we end up driving Mack trucks through and we turn ourselves upside down. I mean, that's all I wanted to protect again. That was the you know, the conflict I had in my mind about where you draw this distinction, and are we comfortable as I mean, I get it for 10. I'm worried about I suppose I can live with 11, but the moment I get to 12 and beyond that would fall into this category, I'm scared to death. And I want to make sure that in the course of structuring it as Ray has suggested, we're not opening ourselves up to some kind of selective action that favors one over another and jams us up on a longer term basis. I mean, because I firmly believe no good deed goes unpunished, and this could be another one of those examples where with the best of intentions, we just set ourselves up for something. So that's what I'm wrestling with now that I understand with more clarity the economic fairness issue that Ray raised and its interaction with the cap issue.
Are there other tax-exempt organizations that would potentially fall in the same category that we know of presently? You mentioned the Thursday Morning Club, Austria, is that an example?
The community house.
The community house has had this situation, yeah. We don't know how it came about.
Okay, so we know of 3 of them we're talking about so far.
Well, that one, no.
Just
one.
We have one.
The community house is not borough-owned.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's, I believe, goes back to the 50s.
Okay,
When it was
okay.
converted from the settlement house to the community house. And, you know, I guess for the value that it adds, as does the library and the museum to the community. The action that takes place in the facility rather than the fact that it's not a borough-owned building, and the other 2 are.
Okay.
Dan, what might be helpful is attached to the sewer charge ordinance, that was the first one we talked about, is the list of exempt properties.
Okay.
And that would be the same list of the potential group that would try to state a claim, but the distinction, I think, which is what Ostrey drew, is none of those are borough-owned properties, like the library.
Or have usage as such.
Or usage as such, right. There's a list attached, like a 2-page list of exempt properties. We don't want to go through, there's some individuals on there who are disabled ward vendors and things that is not public information, but the institutional users are there.
See, earlier I agreed with Austri in supporting your distinction. I still think I agree with it. And if you support the distinction you made, Ray, that would mean that we would reject this proposal.
Which, the sewer proposal?
No, the taking the electrical and water out of the budgets of.
No,
The other way around.
other way around.
Welcome to my world.
That's where it's
I,
not clear the way it's written, because Robert explained that to support this would mean to maintain the status quo.
Right.
don't we
So
currently?
you are correct, it would be in opposition then if you support Ray's.
Don't we currently charge, so to speak, water and electric to the library, for example, in their budget?
In their budget, yes.
Okay, and this is proposing eliminating the appropriations from that budget, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I do have it right. And I continue to think so I would not support this for the reasons that you stated earlier. It seems to me the only reason you would agree with this is if you said that the library and the museum were performing quasi-municipal functions anyway, that they were in effect acting as a DPW or police or fire, performing the same kinds of services, and in addition, and that's where I think Ostrey's distinction of being in a municipal-owned building helps. If you think they're close enough to being a quasi-municipal function, then you should treat them the way you would another municipal function. Not to further confuse matters, but that's where I think John's distinction comes into play, because they are not like the DPW because they do receive additional funding from non-municipal, non-tax sources. And that's another reason why I still agree with your distinction and would oppose this proposal, if I have that all right.
Well, disagree
From the look on your face, I don't have it all right.
Well, I'm advocating, I think it's confusing because, you know, we put in a recommendation and then we're suggesting to reject the recommendation that we made. So I think we probably confused things to start with, and that's probably, Robert and I should have been clearer with each other in terms of this.
Well, you can say I'm confused, that's okay.
I'm probably not in where you are, Dan, in terms of this. I think as a matter of equity, that we're treating two entities differently than we treat everybody else, and I do view them as quasi-public
Well, let me
entities.
stop you there, because how do you account for John's distinction, I think is at least a valid question. These two entities are not the same as DPW, police, fire, health, because they do raise money outside
Health does
of
too.
the taxes.
Health is too, you're right.
They have additional independent funding sources, so that does make them different, doesn't it?
It helps in the sense that they reduce the obligation on us to support their operations, and I think that the library has been a good steward of their resources, which I was questioning early on, why don't you use their endowments? I think they've demonstrated that they've used the maximum revenue generated by their endowments to support and reduce the obligation and the request to us. Conversely, police, fire, the other departments just show up and say, oh, our budget went up 5%. We haven't done anything to raise any money. We don't have endowments. We don't do capital campaigns. Here's our bill. And we entertain, and I think I do a better job at saying, oh, we're going to reduce that. But in the long and the short, their budget goes up from year to year. The library, we've now got to a situation, and I think where this got into the gray areas, well, why did they get a statutory formula and they're guaranteed an amount of money each year under the mill rate? And that people say, well, they're guaranteed money. The argument, the flip argument, which they raised, is that, well, the police and fire don't even have a statutory. They just come in and say, oh, my contract provides for it, here it is. It's a $2 million increase, not based on a statute, based on a contract. So that's kind of where, philosophically, I'm probably on the library side in the sense of saying that we're giving them a bill and we're giving the museum a bill that we don't give to the other departments. And we also give those other departments more dollars, even though it's not based on a formula. It's based on collective bargaining and prior contracts from prior bargaining situations that mandates that they get far more money than the library gets, or the Museum of Early Craft and Trade. Museum would give $18,000 a year to support that building. I mean, just, they raise every other penny themselves. I mean, they're really struggling to keep going. And we compound their pain by giving, on one hand we give them a grant, and on the other hand we take it back with a bill for electric and the water on a building that we own. So we were just trying to balance the equities. I'm probably confused it matter more.
You've given a very astute political answer and argued very eloquently on behalf of the library. However, I don't think that's the issue. Look, I do think there's a distinction because there's an independent funding availability for those two organizations. I'm not saying that I think that distinction causes me to conclude one thing or another, but there is a distinction. The only question is whether that's a distinction that supports continuing to make, continuing to treat them differently.